extended producer responsibility laws are putting new pressures on packaging departments financially as they're trying to figure out the eco-modulation fees that the companies are going to have to pay. We have an opportunity to talk with David Gray. He's the founder and managing director of EPR Global Consulting about how this is all shaking out. David, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Lisa.
So first, tell us, what are the financial implications of EPR for a packaging department?
So the financial obligations for packaging departments for EPR are really based on statutory compliance legislation by 7 active EPR states in the US. And the fees and the legislation is based on the type of material and the weight of packaging material that a producer introduces into each of these active 7 states.
Okay, how substantial are these fees?
These fees can become quite substantial. For an emerging market producer or a consumer products brand that is a smaller company, say maybe a $25 million company, these fees could be in the range of $25,000 to $75,000. For a mid-market company, these fees could be in the range somewhere between $200,000 and $500,000. For a global enterprise company, these fees could range from $500,000 to well over $1 million. It's all based on the complexity of the packaging materials and the complexity of their distribution footprint.
David, if I understand correctly, that's for each state that has the law, correct?
No, that would be in total.
In total. Okay. All right. Even still, we're talking substantial dollars here. Do you think most packaging directors are aware of this, and most brand owner companies are aware of this by now? How substantial these fees are going to be?
I think there's a solid general awareness amongst the industry. However, I question the level of engagement. I think many of the larger CPG producers, our consumer products producers, are very much engaged and very much aware. But some of the mid-market and emerging brands that I'm speaking to, they may have an awareness, but they're not fully compliant yet at this time.
Okay. I know that there are a couple of the states that have already started to receive fees. I believe Oregon for sure, because their law is final, written. California, I know, is has already asked for some fees, and Colorado, I believe, is the third one, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Supply reporting is due for Oregon, Colorado, and California. And then the remaining supply states are looking for pre-program type data, or what the Circular Action Alliance refers to as simplified supply reporting. But fees have not been scheduled yet to the simplified supply reporting.
Okay.
Colorado, Oregon, and California will have invoices due in January of 2027.
Okay, how does that work though? It's for earlier years because they have to establish a baseline first, is that correct?
Yes, correct. California required a baseline of reporting for 2023, and that is based and used for the individual source reduction plans that come into place for California.
Okay. How difficult is it for packaging departments to go back and try to collect the data?
It is
If they,
extremely difficult.
because
The
they didn't
software
have it,
systems,
they didn't have it already, correct? Most of
in
them?
most cases, they did not have the packaging material weights. A lot of the legacy packaging software systems didn't really account for EPR. They more so accounted for structural design and procurement purposes.
Okay. And it's now that they have a little bit of a baseline, then the next year fee is going to be based on the change between 1 year to the next? Is that how
No, it's not. No,
the
the
fee?
packaging EPRs are not, the fees are not based on change from 1 year to the next. The fees are based on a supply report that goes back 2 years prior. So there's about a 12-month lag between the supply. So in other words, 2025 supply will have invoices due January of 2027. And the fees are based on material weight, material type, and the jurisdiction that the packaging and the products shipped into. For example, California, Oregon, Colorado, and so forth.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Thank you. Do you think that some of the corporations that have to pay these fees are kind of blaming the packaging departments because they have to pay them? Not necessarily because they have to pay them, because that's part of the EPR law. The packaging departments didn't have anything to do with that, but the decisions that the packaging department has made is what is going to set those fees. Do you think they're getting blamed for maybe the amount of fees that corporations will have to pay?
I don't think the packaging departments per se are getting blamed for the fees. The responsibility historically for packaging leadership has been product protection, safety, brand representation, and sustainability was always a very important component. But now with packaging EPR, the sustainability now becomes a cost line. I don't think the packaging departments are to blame. I think there's many of the organizations are still trying to figure out who really owns ownership and responsibility of packaging EPR. Is it the packaging team? Is it the sustainability team, the finance team, or the legal team? Many organizations are still struggling to define how they're going to internalize that process.
It would be interesting to hear some case studies on that, wouldn't it? I know I would like to see how different companies are handling that. Have you had a chance to talk with like, or do you have like a best practice advice for how they should be handling that?
Yes, my best practices advice is start with the data. Many of the organizations that have an understanding of EPR but don't know where to start have a data issue. So really they need to collect the data for all of their products. They have to collect how many packaging components are associated with each product, what material are those packaging components made of, and what is the weight of each of those materials. And they need to start systematically organizing that material data and then couple that with the supply data of the amount of those products or amount of packaging materials that is shipped into each individual state. For companies that don't readily have that data available, there is a methodology that is promoted by the Circular Action Alliance called ABOM, and that stands for Average Bill of Materials, where you could take packaging types by product group or product classification, measure one of those packaging product types, and apply that across a range of product. However, the Circular Action Alliance is very specific that the methodology needs to be documented and it needs to be followed with very strict guidance and support.
Okay. Yes, I know that they've got a lot of guidance, as you say, on how to help people with their reporting. But the data collection, that's at the corporate level. And I know different companies do it differently, as you already mentioned. I did have one other question for you that I don't know. It seems that the corporations, I'm just wondering if the corporations, once they start having to pay these EPR fees, there's a profit that's associated with different product lines. And I'm just wondering if maybe the packaging departments might get a little um, punished. I don't know if that's the right word. Like, if the EPR fees are too high, would they maybe try to make up that money from the packaging department budget? Would companies do something like that?
Well, I think what they would do is they would put pressure on the packaging teams to review the materials. Many multi-layer plastics, many different types of plastics are very high fee. And of course, paper, which is more of a renewable resource, more readily renewable resource, that is a much lower fee. So, but different types of plastics have different benefits. So there are trade-offs involved. And I think there will be a lot of pressure put on the packaging departments. They're not suggesting to replace plastic altogether, but the move would be to move from a what we would call an unhealthy plastic to a more healthy plastic that is readily recyclable and has demand for that recycled plastic material downstream in the supply chain.
Okay. David, in your dealings with clients and all, do you think most packaging directors are aware of these financial implications of EPR on their business?
I think most packaging directors are aware of EPR, and I think we're just at the beginning. I think they're learning a lot about EPR. I wrote a white paper about the compliance and the new U.S. packaging compliance economy, just on this subject to help people get educated around EPR and what the implications and what the trade-offs are.
Okay, excellent. Well, I will make sure to include a link to that white paper so people can learn a little bit more about that. I'm sure there's great advice in there. David, is there anything else that you wanted to share that I haven't thought to ask about on this topic?
I wanted to share that EPR is really a financial topic. And to manage the finances of EPR, it's really important for companies and producers to develop an infrastructure that allows them to have financial control. In other words, they have visibility and a centralized source of truth for all of their packaging specification data. They have rules logic that can be applied from state to state in terms of what the fee structures and eco-modulation structures look like, as well as it's important for them to have an infrastructure that allows them to do scenario modeling. We've built a platform at EPR Global Consulting called EPR Access, and it does just that. It's a financial governance, financial EPR infrastructure platform.
Okay, it almost sounds like uh, sustainability for packaging departments now is going to be more of a financial decision than a sustainability decision. Is that, you get that sense too?
That's absolutely right. EPR is very much a packaging financial decision.
It'll be interesting to see how that sits with some environmentalists. I guess, you're still doing, still achieving some sustainability goals, improvements, I guess I should say, not just goals. So it should kind of still be a good thing from a sustainability point of view.
I think from an environmental standpoint, it's a good thing. And as many people say, once it starts to impact the bottom line, you see a real catalyst for change.
I did read a little bit of your white paper before we talked because I had seen it. And I'm just thinking that there is a bit of an alignment then between the financial side of EPR and obviously the sustainable environmental side of it as well.
Yes, it's definitely something that has and will continue to cross the CFO's desk.
Okay, excellent. David, thank you so much for your time. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa.